Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's interview, we're going to be talking with Jodi, a friend from Texas, her IBC journey, her background. We're just going to have a great conversation, and I hope that you enjoy. All right, Jodi, I've been looking forward to this ever since I met you. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, when I think about you, you're definitely the life of the party type of a person. You bring a levity into group conversations and group interactions that I really appreciate, a humor, a sarcasm. It's a level of connection that I've maybe not expressed enough to you, so I'll do it now while I am thinking about it. We're getting ready to, sit down and talk about life and life insurance and your IBC journey and all that kind of stuff. But we were talking family before we got on here. You are married. You are from the state of Texas, or it's where you're, you'll paint the picture, but you're in Texas. Got a big family. You're on this IBC journey. Of course, I want to get in on that. But if you would, just introduce everybody now that I've told them that you're fun.
Yeah, well, now I have a lot to live up to. The pressure's on. So I am Jodi LaFrance. I grew up in West Texas in a small community by El Paso. The name of the community is Fort Hancock, Texas, and it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. So um, I I don't know. Just I'm very blessed. So thankful to be here. You're one of my favorites, Jesse. I feel so blessed. So I am married. My husband's name is Jody as well. So he's Big Jody and I'm Little Jody. And the joke is, even if I'm 9 months pregnant, I still want you to call me Little Jody. So noted. But I think those days are behind us. We have 5 children, ages 17 down to 6 at the time of this recording. We've got 4 girls and 1 boy. So there's a lot of estrogen running around in our house. And my husband, he is a wonderful man to be able to put up with me and all of our shenanigans. So we live in Abilene, Texas, which is kind of in between Fort Worth and Lubbock, if you know where that is. And so it's a good sized community. I always tell people, like, if we have a super Walmart, I mean, what else do you need? I don't know what else. We've made it. We have arrived, coming from my community. So anyway, yeah, I don't know what else you'd like to know, but we my husband is an assistant principal at our high school where our girls go to school. He's been in education for over 20 years. We have been married for 20 years, and it's been a really good journey. Most of those were really good. I have to tell you, I love him more now than I did when I first married him. So that's a good thing, right?
Exactly right. Well, and that's what has made some of the conversations that we've had so far, because we've had one or two one on one. Normally, we're in a group setting of some professional sort, but the dynamic of y'all having, a marriage like you do, us having ours, we're coming up on this is our 19th anniversary. We've got 4 children. We're one behind you there, but we're inverted in that regards. We've got all boys, one girl. Y'all have got the opposite. So I think dynamics like that are just neat and interesting, of course. So start then wherever you want. Have you always done insurance, professionally? So jump in on, whatever point you want to professionally, but how did you get into insurance? What was the pinpoint like where you were exposed to infinite banking? And then, of course, I want to know what that looks like, but you start where you want.
Yeah, no problem. So I graduated from Texas A&M in 2004. Very blessed, very grateful for that experience, and just didn't have a lot of direction in life. I'm interested in so many things. I did an internship in Washington, D.C. my senior year of college, and thought maybe I'll go into politics, or policy, community. I'm an agricultural journalism major. So I thought maybe I will communicate agricultural policy and work in an embassy overseas. I speak Spanish. I used to sing in a Mexican band. That's a part of my I know, just I feel like I've lived all these different lives. But that was during my sophomore and junior year of college. I actually took some time off and lived in Mexico with an amazing family, and I saw more of the United States with that band than I did with my own family. That's a whole other story. But I would just say I have lacked direction. I think I wanted to be a wife and a mom. That's always been a very strong, you know, part of my life, motivation for me. So when I met my husband and we married, I taught school for a little bit and I thought, man, I'm sick of teaching all these other people's kids. I'm going to have my own babies and I'm going to love them because they're mine. And it's going to be the best thing in the world. And then we had a few and I was like, wow, this is really hard. It might be easier to ship those babies off and go teach somebody else's kids and then you're done by, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But anyway, I mostly stayed home. When we had our third child, I started doing some part-time work with a friend of mine at our local church and just doing, I loved it because we got free coffee, quote unquote free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Um, but I loved it. It was adult interaction. I felt like I was able to serve and it was awesome. I really enjoyed that for a few years. And then things changed, and I had an opportunity to join that same friend in an insurance agency. So, because I speak Spanish, I was translating for his Spanish speaking clients. We did that for a couple of years and then ended up joining an insurance marketing organization. And that was my foray into life insurance, mostly focusing on mortgage protection. Um, and so that's where I've been for the past 5 years. And that was my introduction. It was through that company that I became exposed to the infinite banking concept. And that's a whole journey, but that is how I get tickled. I tell people nobody like wants to be an insurance agent, like straight out of the womb. That's not on any kid's top 10 list of what I want to be when I grow up. So I want to be an insurance agent. Like, no, no, they don't. They want to be an astronaut or a firefighter or a ballet dancer or something. Anyway, that's just not something that we're really exposed to unless you had a parent that was doing it. A
Hmm.
funny side story. We had just moved to Abilene, and so our third daughter was pretty young. And my second daughter came in one day and she goes, "Mom, Micah needs a friend." And I'm like, what's going on? She goes, she's playing insurance agent with her stuffed animals and she's got a horse and she's like waterboarding him saying, "Don't use tobacco. If you smoke, you're going to get charged tobacco ratings." And I'm like, well, there you go. How about that? So
That is hilarious.
yeah, I just more is caught than taught. Is that right?
It is right. All right, so I do want to dig in there. I am going to ask some questions around that because, yes, I mean, there's just some things that nobody's raising their hand saying, when I grow up, I want to be a car salesman. And yet, we're all driving cars. I got to the office today in a car. So, some things aren't at the top of the list, and yet it happened for you, for me. So I do want to know. Okay, I could understand in general, of course, you're 3 children deep into building the family. You still have aspirations to do something. I think it's biblical, actually. Um, Not necessarily out of the home, in the home. That's another discussion. We've had one, actually. We've had, and Becca would have been in on it. I'll mention Becca just because you've mentioned our mutual friend. That's how we got to know and meet each other, was through Becca Wilhite, author. If you haven't read Becca's book, you need to read Becca Wilhite's book, Beaver Bankers. Very cool. We've read it to our children. But what I was saying is Becca joined us with several other stellar ladies, of which you would remind me, you would appreciate it if you've not seen this. Also, Jodi, the Virtuous Woman Roundtable, where we're getting in and talking about Proverbs 31 and being industrious while maintaining a home is a great conversation. So if you haven't seen that, y'all should check it out in our roundtable series. You had this general desire to do something else, though, is what I'm saying. I could understand that. I could appreciate that. I've seen that. I've witnessed that. Okay. But what about insurance did reach you enough to where you'd say, I'll give this a go? Like, what did attract you about it? Maybe what along the way did you not like? What'd you think about it?
Or you look like, well, quite honestly, I got laid off from my previous job. So, pain, oftentimes is what leads us to open up our perspective. All of a sudden I'm open to other things. And so that's just a whole God story. I have to tell you, I'm incredibly grateful for that season of life. The Lord taught me so much. Um, because initially it didn't feel good, to have your employer say, I'm sorry, we just don't have a place for you, and that that was incredibly difficult. I'm used to being at the front of the class. I'm used to being the star pupil, the one that does pretty good at most of the things that she tries. And so it wasn't my fault. It was like politics, or not politics, but just finances of things. It's not something that I did, but it happened to me. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if you jumped in the pit or you fall in the pit, you're in the pit. So what are you going to do about that now?
Mm-hmm.
So, in all of that, um, my schedule was opened up. I talked to a previous pastor of mine and just said, hey, I got laid off and I would like some work. Do you have any contacts? And so reached out and connected me very quickly. Like within 48 hours, I had another job. So it wasn't like this giant season. My heart really goes out to people that have walked through that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the Lord provided an opportunity almost immediately. And my friend Chris Craig said, um, you know, I'll pay you privately. We're working at a captive agency that is predominantly focused in our local county. And so it was a PNC agency. Had a great experience. It's a wonderful company. And he really encouraged me to get licensed. And so and he said, I can pay you more, if you're willing to do that. So I'm like, well, let's do it. So it took about 2 weeks to study through the online modules and take my exam. And so that was, I was just an assistant. I was helping. Then things changed in that organization and some other opportunities were presented, and it seemed like it was a good thing for him. Uh, but he wasn't going to be able to pay me because he was going to be taking a pay cut and needing to build his business again. And so that kind of left me in a situation where um, I was going to have to make a change again. And yet I had a lot of peace in my heart. That was during 2020. We had another
Mm.
baby. By that time we had 5 kids. I had another child. Layoff number one happened after baby number four. And I guess you could call it a layoff, but it didn't really feel that way. Layoff number two happened after baby number five. And I was like, man, Lord, here I am again. I know you're not surprised, but I don't know that I like how this feels. But you have such an amazing track record. You've never I love this scripture. I was young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging for bread. I can 100% attest that that's been true in our life, that the Lord has provided every
Mm-hmm.
need that we've ever had as it came along. We didn't get to see 10 steps down the road. It's been a walk of faith. Um, but one thing led to another, and I had hope in my heart, and I'm so grateful for the peace of God that provided that for me. And so we both were starting with this IMO, and so I needed a life insurance um, license to be able to do that. So again, went back to studying at night. Took me about 2 weeks to work through the course and passed it on the first time, and just kept trucking. And so that is how I got my licenses. It was a need to be able to sell insurance. And the thing that I liked in that season is I could do everything remotely. Everybody had to do everything remotely. It's like the insurance
Mm.
industry just shifted on a dime, because the way that my organization worked is people would buy leads. An agent would buy leads. The company did all the marketing for them. And then you'd buy leads, you'd call them, you'd book appointments, and then you'd drive and you'd go to someone's house, and you had to do everything in person. Um, well, pre-COVID, I would never have signed up for that. That's just not in my lifestyle, to leave my kids and go drive around and run appointments. I mean, I had babies. I was a stay-at-home mom. So isn't it interesting how something that's bad might not be all bad? And there's some redemption there. So we were doing everything remotely, and it was a learning curve, to learn how to do a sales process and how to book an appointment. I just remember when I had my first stack of leads, and was going to call through them, like my hands were sweating, my armpits were sweating, like the physiological response of having to do something new and learn a new skill. I'm like, why am I afraid to pick up the phone? I do it all the time. I mean, I am a talker, if you haven't figured out, but all of a sudden, just this little shift, and it was like, oh, um, this is different, this is new. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that season. I mean, I still kind of get nervous when I have to do that, but I've also learned your brain doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. And
Mm.
sometimes we have to tell our brain, you're not afraid, you're excited that you're going to go help someone. You're going to help them get what they need, and see what their need is, and see if you can help match them to a solution that's appropriate for their family. That was a game changer for me. And I've taught that to our kids too, is, sometimes we are afraid. The only fears that are natural is the fear of falling and the fear of loud sounds. Everything else is learned. And so, just learning to master myself. And obviously I'm on a journey. I have not arrived, but those are some of the best things that I feel like I've learned in that process. So that was how I became an insurance agent, and especially in the life business. And then the organization that we work with, they have a marketing program called Debt Free Life. And so the idea is you can use participating whole life policies from a mutually owned company. And if they're properly structured, properly funded, you get coaching, you can use this as a strategy to actually pay your mortgage off in 9 years or less without adding any extra dollars than what you're currently spending. That was the strategy. Um, and it immediately piqued our interest. I was like, I would like to know more about that. And so that's not IBC, but it was a pathway that helped me understand there is something called the infinite banking concept, and this debt payoff is like it is one way that you can implement that in your life. And so, we had debt, we had a mortgage, and have still, but we're getting closer every day. And then student loans, we had quite a bit of student loans. And so I don't know if you have any questions about any of that, but that's also kind of that's a big part of our story.
Of course, I've got questions, but I love just letting you go. Well, one thing so three things, because I'm at half a page of notes already. The one part about when you reached out to a pastor after the first layoff, I would like to underscore that, because that's such a huge value to be able to reach out to somebody and experience the value of leveraging connections, of having quality people in your life where you can say, hey, I got this going on in this area. It could be any area. It doesn't have to be professional. And you could say, could you point me in the right direction? For, like, I've done that before. I mean, I've been sitting down in a Mexican restaurant and just had, golden nuggets given to me by, a good friend or a mentor. I could take you to some points in my life. So I would like to underscore that, because I think that's fantastic. And it's so worthwhile for us to cultivate those kinds of great relationships in our life and connections. And so I loved that. See if I can read my handwriting. I also loved what you said about fear versus excitement. I've definitely, because of business, thought before about the verse where David encouraged himself in the Lord, is how it says it. So, and he experienced a hard time in his life. Family was literally kidnapped and stuff. Okay, friends around him were like almost to the point of being murderous against him, blaming him for everybody's predicament and all this stuff. And the Bible says he encouraged himself in the Lord. Could be fearful, but you could just one more step and you could move yourself towards forward movement, excitement. So I could understand that. I could appreciate that. There's some life experiences that you made me reflect on, which is cool. And then also about those experiences, the layoffs. I mean, I've had contracts not renew. You know, I've had contracts with a company and that company go bankrupt in different industries, not in the insurance. So prior life experiences to where, yes, it was not very clear as a trajectory of, oh, this is probably what it's going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and just on out, right? 40 years or whatever, like some fields are. But boy, I had just such big overflowing experiences of growth and new perspective and duress. I mean, it's hard, it's uncomfortable, but I would have missed out on so much growth if there hadn't have been that hard time or that unexpected change that I certainly wouldn't have picked for myself. But it was good. I never would have pushed the button myself. It's like, hey, let's just try what happens if this doesn't go that way anymore. But so much growth, and I mean, we're literally having a conversation today because I can see all these threads, that have these points in my life. So all that's really neat to me. Let's dig in, however much you want, however much you'll let me, because I've spoken to people who work in the general insurance field, and there's such a wide array of how people embrace or repel or quasi use infinite banking, language, themes, topics, etc. Right? Like I know the IMO that you've mentioned. I've met people in that IMO before. I've been recruited by folks in that general space before, and here I am at the time as I was first getting into getting my license because I wanted to exclusively help people implement the infinite banking concept. I'd already personally done it for some years. That's what I wanted to do. But then you get all these calls and emails and texts and everything, and I'm open to having conversations with people. And then I hear about this debt-free life, and I'm like, yeah, but I've actually been doing that for years. I'd paid off my student loans with the infinite banking concept, paid off family car, paid off credit cards, and then we'd been financing things that were moving us forward as a family. So, but I want your perspective. So I'm saying that to say, I have some things in my mind, but I want you to begin describing anything that you would like to about, you had a general start in insurance, and there are so many different things, right? Like you mentioned mortgage protection. People could pitch it as, debt recapture or debt payoff or whatever. There is PNC. You also mentioned PNC, property and casualty. We're familiar with car insurance and all these home insurance and all these other things. But also, Nelson clearly says in the beginning of the book that the infinite banking concept is not a gimmick. It's not a sales tool. It's not even particularly for insurance agents. The book, the message, the material, the concept for agents to be able to build a business or write policies. And I'm not against getting policies in force. I'm not against agents having profitable businesses, right? But I am saying that I agree and that I've embraced that and that I've lived that out both personally and professionally, that just because somebody says you can get out of debt or you could finance things with whole life insurance doesn't make that the infinite banking concept. So I've said a lot. I went on for a while. You've been really patient. I want to get in your head of what that was like, how you thought about it then, how you think about it now, because at some point you began to be exposed to infinite banking, investigate infinite banking, and then you can tell us where you're at on your journey in infinite banking now. Tell me about all of it.
That's good. So I think you're right. You just start where you are. And why is it that it's mostly insurance agents that are talking about this? I think because we typically use insurance products. I just, you are where you are unless someone that you know has exposed you to a strategy or a certain thought process. Like these are just not things you wake up thinking about. That's my perspective, I'm trying to think of other industries, where you might apply something like this to. But I think about the culture that we were raised in around our thoughts around money, or relationships, or you're trained by someone. You are mentored by someone. And one of our friends, he said, every family has a culture. He said, even if you grow up next to the house where your spouse was raised, there's a culture over here and there's a culture over here. And then that's the joy of figuring out how to mesh that together, and create your own. But as far as, learning about IBC, we had debt. And so, um, and my husband went back to school. He wanted to become an athletic director. And so we only had 3 kids at the time. And so we qualified, the financial aid that we qualified for was low interest student loans, federally backed student loans. And so our thought process was, we'll take out all they'll give us, but we'll just put it in a savings account and we won't touch it, and we'll only use what we need for this master's program. So the master's program was supposed to be $20,000. And we're like, okay, it is what it is. So we get rolling. Well, then things change, and we're expecting another child. I'm like, okay. So the house that we were living in, we felt was not going to be adequate for that. So we're looking for another option. We end up buying another home, but we couldn't sell the home that we were in. So we became unintentional landlords. If anybody knows what that feels like. It was going to be great. Our renters were good people. They paid on time. That was nice. The only problem was, almost immediately the AC unit went out, the water heater went out, and our stove went out. Those are all things that are on us as the landlords. That's not something that we can charge the renters for. And so we needed a lot of capital, and we needed it pretty darn quick. So guess what happened? We have the student loan money that's just sitting there. Let's just use that and we'll pay it back. Okay. So life happens. You can have a plan, but you can't control life. You just can't. There's just things that happen. And so invariably you will need access to capital for opportunities or for emergencies. And I feel like I learned that from Tim Urich in one of the podcasts that he had with David Stearns and Lee Barganier. So we have baby number 4. Okay. And we're rocking along. Life is good. My husband finishes his master's program, then decides to switch gears, and instead of going towards becoming an athletic director, decides to get his principal certification. So that's a little extra money, not a bunch, but it's some. And all of a sudden we find out we're expecting baby number 5. And that was not a surprise to the Lord. It was a surprise to me. And so there's a whole story around that, but we won't put that out on the internet for just everybody to hear. So anyway, not every surgery is as effective as you think it's going to be, I guess, is all I will say about that. So
Statistics have their anomalies, right?
yes, there are outliers. You can make plans, but uh as in the biblical words of whatever, Jurassic Park, what's our friend's name, Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way, or nature finds a way, so where there was no way. Anyway, that's a joke in case you're offended by that, for our really serious people. Um, so we're going to have baby number 5, and that was not in the plan. But we know that God will make a way. And so we get to the end of that period of time. My husband finishes his principalship, and now we get the bill in for these student loans, and it was 3 times what we had anticipated. And guess what? None of that money was in our savings account. And that was, I was just telling one of my daughters about it. I'm kind of jumping tracks here a little bit, but um, I'm in a season right now where I feel like it is incredibly important for parents and grandparents to teach their kids the stories of their youth. And we need to be telling our kids our stories. We just assume that they know where we've been and the challenges that we faced. But they need to hear it from us. This is what happened. I was scared. This is how God came through. You know, they need that. These are not just biblical stories. This is what's happening in our life. And so I was telling my 13-year-old just the other day, I said, when I don't know how to adequately explain the panic, the sinking feeling that came over us, and probably shame too. Um, when we got that student loan bill in and we found out that the minimum payment was going to be more than our mortgage. And have another baby. Like I can't just go get a job without incurring childcare. Like whatever I'm up can do, just hand that check over to a babysitter if I'm going to really work full time. So it's like, God, we need you to come through, you know? And I mean, it was very humbling. And so I was just telling my daughter, we were scared and just kind of tapped out and very embarrassed because we early in our marriage we had started implementing Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, which was a huge blessing to us. I can't tell you what a good blessing that was in our life, just to teach us the habits of how to budget and how to learn how to live below your means, just the human behaviors that we needed to get under control and you know learn honestly. um So, we have Dave Ramsey in the back of our head of like, debt is bad, don't go into debt. And then we did it. We did it. And we didn't do it a little bit like to us. We went all in. I mean, we went hog wild. I'm pretty sure we may have spent $30,000 at McDonald's just because I was overwhelmed
Mm.
and eating out and just trying to survive with five little kids and, a husband that's stressed out. And anyway, so it was a hard time. So I began to cry out to God, and I was telling my daughter, I want you to understand why I'm so passionate about the infinite banking concept, because you need to understand what it means to me. It's not just some neat idea that I thought up of, I think I'd like to learn about that today. No, we were in pain. We were
Mhm.
scared and we had bills. And so I remember praying one day and I just said, God, we did this. This is not your fault. You didn't do this to us. We chose this path and it's not your fault. You've already been kind. If you never did another good thing for us ever again, you've already done too much, you know?
Mhm.
But what I know from reading through God, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, is you are exceedingly kind. You are exceedingly kind and you are patient beyond all patience. I mean, just read the Kings and the Prophets. Read it is, the angry, I'm mixing all my thoughts here together, but this idea that God is angry in the Old Testament and then, he's sweet and kind. It's kind of like Santa Claus in the New Testament. Like that's myth. That is not how that is. He is exceedingly kind and patient through all of his word. And so I'm just like, man, I am falling on your mercy. I'm asking you to be merciful to us. Would you please give us a good idea? Because I do know my grandmother taught us that an ounce of favor is worth a lifetime of labor. And God
Ah.
can do one God inspired idea can change everything. Where you feel stuck, he makes a way where there is no. I'm going to get to preaching over here. You better watch out. But I've just lived it. So, anyway, I'm praying, God, would you please give us a good idea? And I will obey. But I'm at my rope's end. And so I remember sleeping and I had a dream. And in the dream, it's like the Lord reminded me that my husband had some whole life insurance policies, and that life insurance, if it's whole life, it builds cash value. And I did not, this breaks my heart. This breaks my heart. So I I surrendered those
Mm.
policies, and I was working at the life insurance company at the time. Actually, no, that's not true. Actually, it is. So I wasn't in life insurance yet. I was still just in the PNC agency. And so I went to the agent that was kind of the manager over that area, and I said, I need to surrender these policies. And he's like, don't do it. Please don't do it. That what you have is so good. You can't get what you have for what you're paying. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. we got a bunch of debt that we've got, like we're not going to buy groceries. Like I've got to solve a problem. And so he strongly encouraged me, please don't surrender those policies. But I'm like, no, I'm doing it. Do it, write up the paperwork. So we did. And um that that covered about a third of the debt just by that solution. And I can't tell you, Jesse, how excited I was about that. I mean, it felt like manna from heaven. Is that, you know, like Abraham and Isaac, Abraham takes Isaac up the mountain, and then on the other side they couldn't tell that God was bringing provision, that the ram was coming up the other side. That's what this felt like, is that God was providing, and he was. Man, now looking back, I wish that the agents in that agency had been super familiar with the infinite banking concept and could have encouraged me, Jodi, don't surrender those policies. Take a loan against them and you can pay that back over time. Like it's better to do that, than to surrender them. But we didn't know, we didn't know. And I don't know that agent wasn't aware, but for whatever reason, he either didn't know or didn't feel like I would listen, and I probably wouldn't have, because I probably was not open to learning about that at that time. So anyway, long story long, probably still, we end up moving to a different community, and in the middle of all of that, we made enough on our house that we were able to purchase a home here, have a reasonable mortgage that didn't eat up every last bit of margin that we had in our take-home pay, and we were able to pay off the rest of our student loans. So we literally just have a mortgage now, and I'm so incredibly grateful. So that was going back to telling my daughter, I am incredibly passionate about the infinite banking concept, because implementing it, even in the imperfect ways that we have, it has been a tremendous blessing, and it's been part of God's provision for our life. So I can't shut up about it. I mean, when something, man, I get excited about hair products or skin products or a new restaurant, have you tried these tacos? They'll change your life. We are going to share what we're excited about. And so I am pretty excited about this.
Well, I do particularly love your emphasis on intergenerational conversations. That's important to me as well. It's a big reason behind why I try to do so much in video, because of the legacy, even within my own house, that I believe that could leave. And I also think that that's biblical. You're making me think about where Moses was commanded by God to remind Joshua of, remember this happened. Remember, he was supposed to rehearse it to Joshua so that Joshua would hear it and be reminded and remember, the Lord did this, the Lord did that. Lots of grace, lots of mercy, lots of abundant love all throughout Scripture, for sure. And then I think adopting that within our houses is a beautiful thing to do. Okay, you spoke on it some. Let me ask one more time. Do you think there's anything, and I guess I can't ask the question without saying that I think some thoughts already. But I want your perspective to gauge what I'm thinking. I think it certainly could be the perspective that if you or I are going in, and I've also surrendered whole life policies before. Thankfully, in my case, it was to the intent and purpose of we were getting IBC style whole life policies. But again, what I'm saying is I went in the office, I had that conversation. So I've been on this side of that table, being the consumer, saying, I don't want this contract anymore, right? I don't want this policy anymore. And here are my reasons. And you did the same thing and you had your reasons. Is there something that a knowing agent, and of course that's the other thing, is like all agents can't do all things, right? Like I eat, breathe, and live the infinite banking concept. If I'm talking to somebody about life insurance, it's in that context. It's in that lens. But is there a way to even shut off the consumer's thinking, to not think, oh, they're just trying to keep me on the hook. They're just trying to keep me paying premium. They're just trying to, you know what I'm saying? Is that possible? I think it is, but I think it's very likely not. But
I think it's very difficult, and you have to, we used to say you can't drive a 10-ton truck over a 2-ton bridge. And so, relationally, you can't drive a 10-ton truck of truth over a 2-ton bridge. And so, if you don't have a relationship with someone, the likelihood of them really pushing the pause button on something that's very emotional to
mm,
them, to learn something new, to be willing to rethink their thinking, I think it's a big ask. You know, it's possible, but maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical. I think it would be very difficult, you know. And so there's a lot of grace. I'm not mad at that agent for not telling me about becoming your own banker, whatever. I mean, if an adult, I keep telling myself this, you know, I'm not your priest and I'm not your mom. So you're an adult. If you come in and you tell me this is what I'm doing, if I feel like I have the relational equity to speak some truth and maybe encourage you to consider a different perspective, I will. But at the end of the day, you're going to do what you're going to do, and I have to be okay with that, you know.
yeah, I think the lay of the land. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Zoom lags messes me up.
You know, it breaks your heart when you see someone do something that you would really them rather you would rather them not do.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because as an agent, you can have a detached perspective. Like you're seeing data along with the relationship, but that individual is probably only seeing their dilemma.
That's correct.
Right. So, or at least that's possible. I'm not saying that, of course, agents in general would like to see policies stay on the books because that's just good business. Sure, that's true. But there's so much value in having policies and building a good relationship, etc. But that doesn't negate the fact that the agent can also have a detached, they're not in your situation anyway, so they can have a detached, in that sense, view and perspective to say, well, okay, here's the paperwork, fill it out, you're surrendering the policy. Now that that's filled out, but before I submit it, could we have a 15-minute conversation about what the implications are? And somebody's either going to be open to that or they're not, right? But again, the starting point's very different. The general landscape of insurance is very different than if somebody comes to me and gets on my calendar because they've read the book or watched my video presentation, and from the start we're talking about infinite banking because that's so much more of a lifestyle conversation rather than just the traditional consumeristic paradigm of buying a policy. Anyway, it's an interesting thing.
Well, think about this too. In our culture, the movement from, you know, face-to-face relationships, like relationships with human beings, to wanting to do everything over the internet. You know, there are whole, I don't know if they're IMOs or I don't know what they are. Anyway, I don't know the right word, but some of our competitors are like the marketing that they offer is like that you can purchase your life insurance by yourself. You just go onto a website and put your information in and get what you need, because they don't want they don't want to be sold. And I don't either. Okay. If you ever just want to feel like you're sticking your finger in a meat grinder, like go change your cell phone plan, you know? Go change cell phone providers and let me know what a joy that is to your life. Like, I just did it and I'm telling you, it's terrible. I'm in sales, okay? I appreciate a professional taking care of me and listening to me and not making me feel like I'm sold, but that was uniquely awful. Um, and I don't ever want to make people feel that way. So I'm just like, yeah, you go do it when you feel like sticking your finger in a meat grinder. Like, just, oh, why would you do it? You know? But we're scared of human interaction. And so people think I know what I need. And the reality is I think you and I know, and real insurance professionals, financial professionals understand life insurance does not sell itself. You you need, I mean, Chat GPT can only do so much, you know. It's great, love the tool, but it's not a human. and doesn't understand all of your goals and the ins and outs. And, you know, I don't know. It's important to have a team of professionals around you to help you achieve the goals that you have, to help you articulate the goals that you have. Sometimes I don't even know what I want. I need a friend to come help me paint a picture. Hey, does this seem like a destination you want to end up at? Okay, well then let me hold your hand and let's walk that path together. But, you know, there are many things in my life, Jesse, that I could be improving if I wanted to spend the time and go become an expert about that, or I could go make a friend that's already got the
Mm.
gray hair, you know, and already been there and done that. I'd rather just go make a friend, you know.
I feel like that's where we can go back to your grandma's saying, and coincidentally, I've written down a few of these sayings. Stick your finger in a meat grinder. It's so awful and it's so good at the same time because it's literally making me cringe. But of course, that means that it's sticking in my brain very strongly. It's horrible and awesome at the same time. But your grandma talked about it, if I got it right, an ounce of favor being worth a lifetime of labor. Somebody who's already been there, done that, can speed up your learning curve so much. You can avoid so many pitfalls and mistakes and just a slow start or just so many things by, yeah, talking to somebody who's been there and done that that you relate to and connect well with. It's so good.
The older I get, the more value I have in customer service, um, and relationships and mentorship. When I got into insurance, I just needed to make $500 a month. I needed to replace a part-time income. I was not thinking about a career. I was very short-sighted, like we need groceries. And not that my husband was not providing. He's a wonderful provider. But, it was a budget issue.
Family of seven.
Yeah, like we're trying to survive, And so it's been so interesting to me as I've progressed through my journey here, just just because you can doesn't mean you should, and I'm so grateful for the mentors in my life that have helped, pull back the curtain and say, okay, yes, I know you're capable, you could go do this, but is it really worth your time and effort to try to go be all things to all people? Like maybe it would be a wise thing to specialize and restrict yourself in a way, um, and lean on leverage other relationships, let them serve you. Yeah, you may pay for that service, but there may be times that it's 100% worth it because it's salvaging your sanity. Like I only have so much bandwidth, you know? And where I'm at in my journey now is, we have three teenage daughters and then two elementary age children. And if I give everything that I have during the 9 to 5, which it's not really 9 to 5, but during the daytime to clients and my business, and then I have just maybe some leftovers for my husband and my kids, that's not the life I want to build. That's not what I want. And so I'm really grateful that in the insurance industry, we have permission to create work life balance. I am really grateful for that. It has been a wonderful, wonderful fit for me. Um, I'm not saying it'll never do anything different, but I don't have any plans to get out anytime soon. It's been a tremendous blessing to me.
For sure. I mean, I'm in the office today and I decided to be, and it was for this conversation. I don't recruit. I never began trying to build an agency or anything. I just wanted to work one on one with clients, and I've mentored along the way, but that's just because people have reached out. But there are advantages to it, and for me, same thing. But I can connect with what you're saying about the lifestyle. I can even appreciate in the order, if you intended it that way. I think you did when you mentioned, your husband even before the children, and make sure that we're not showing up to our families with leftovers. That's so very important. And I would prioritize my wife and then to my children and not want to bring them the leftovers. I can appreciate all of that.
I guess this podcast could just be about my grandmothers, It's what a blessing. But my grandmother used to tell us the most the best way to serve your kids is to love their daddy,
Mhm.
you know. And she used to tell us that, the one of the best things that your dad can ever do for y'all is to love your mama and take
Mhm.
care of her. And my husband tells our kids this. Sometimes our kids gang up on us and they have this like unspoken agenda that their whole goal is to push me over the edge. And so I'm so grateful that my husband is my defender, and even if it's against my kids, and
That's exactly right.
he'll say, "Listen, I am in covenant with your mama. I love y'all, but I'm in covenant with your mama. Y'all are going to grow up and move out, but we're a team forever and ever." And so I just think that can be healthy sometimes to just lay that out. This is how the pecking order works, folks.
The good thing about it too, though, I've found is even it could be in the same day. I might be stepping in at one moment, being that defender that you were just describing. It's like, how are you just talking to my wife? How are you just addressing my wife? Right? But in the next moment, if I'm the antagonist and I'm, tackling Lauren and tickling her or something, getting onto her, the kids will run and they'll be her defender. So it's a really neat balance between those things because they do see that example. So then, they're literally being taught, oh, well, we're looking out for mama as well.
That's right.
I could talk about that kind of stuff. Okay, well, I love it. Yeah, we need to hear more from the grandmas as well. I'm enjoying our conversation and what you're bringing to bear. Let me ask this. I'm so I want to get to infinite banking and what it looked like, particularly when you got exposed to the book conversations of people that were focusing on infinite banking, just what all that looked like. But let me ask a couple of questions around things that you've already mentioned. So during the times of these layoffs, um, these ups and downs, student loans, put it here in the savings, but then life happens. Two of the core concepts from the becoming your own banker paradigm came to mind. The first one was the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. I wrote that down when you were talking about when you became unintentional landlords and then bam, right? The people were great, which is not always the case also, which is not always the case. People were great, but that HVAC, that stove, that washing water heater. So he who has the gold makes the rules is one thing. And I'll mention the other one, then I want you to speak to this, and I'd love to get your reflections, knowing what you know now, how you reflect on those moments. I thought of Nelson's golden rule. And then the other one was you went through Financial Peace University. I think there's so much value in Dave's messaging, apart from whole life insurance. He gives people structure. I love that. I read his books. I listen to his stuff. You went through that, but the thing is that the pendulum can always, today, the pendulum for me or you could still swing back one way or the other. Just because we conquered Parkinson's in the past doesn't mean that we are today. So just because we've been debt free in the past doesn't mean that we are today. And, so that it's an ongoing thing. So I thought of Parkinson's law again, which is that's actually just our natural human tendency that we will spend all that we earn. And then, of course, if you add on top of that, that obstacles could present themselves, right, that impede our plans and intentions and whatnot. So, how do you maybe reflect, knowing what you know now, because of infinite banking, on life? No, and that's, that could have been said by anybody, but it was your story. It happened to you. How do you reflect on things like knowing what you know now about the golden rule and Parkinson's law?
hmm that's a really good question. Thinking about the golden rule and just having life happen, he who has the gold makes the rules. Um, for a lot of our marriage, I think we have done well at being disciplined as much as we knew how to be, but I do think we struggled just because we weren't high income earners, and so that wanting to improve your education, wanting to improve your lot in life and set yourself up for success, it's like you need access to financing. You're going to need access to capital. And so where do you go for that? Can just I wish I'd known when we first got married. I mean, wouldn't it have been awesome if our grandparents knew about this? Of course it would be, but we didn't. So we did the best we could with what we had.
Mhm.
Um, but that would have been amazing to be able to finance my husband's master's degree, through our own banking platform. I'm glad that we got student loans from the government versus putting it on credit cards. Thank God we didn't do that. Um, so I'm grateful there. And then as far as Parkinson's go, man, that is a sneaky thing. I mean, I have a budgeting app and I'm still terrible at putting stuff in. I know I'm good at more high level, theory. This is the direction I want to go, but the granular day-to-day behaviors, that's something I will probably have to pay attention to for the rest of my life. I don't know that that's ever just going to become muscle memory for me. But it's just my belief, if I keep practicing good habits and walking with people, being in a community of people who are doing their best to practice good habits, good's going to rub off on me. That I'm going to be in a much better situation than if I'm just trying to do it all myself and just white knuckle it through, for the rest of my life. But Parkinson's law is a real thing. And I was even telling my mom, a friend built us a spreadsheet, a totaling spreadsheet for our budget that we used to do when we were early on in our marriage. And I look now at what our income is versus like when we first got married, and I'm just like, wow, I would have thought that we had it made, looking at the income that we have now, it's a lot higher. And yet, in some ways, I feel like the feelings, the emotions haven't really, we are in a much better place. Mindset wise, we are in a definitely better place. But um, as you age and you have more kids and inflation is a real thing, you think that this number in the future, if I could just get to this number, I'll have it made. Maybe and maybe not. It really has more to do, it's my belief, it's more about my heart, my thought processes, my mindset. That is going to determine a lot more about the peace that we experience in our home around finances versus like a dollar amount of income. um, our pastor told us a couple of years ago, they were looking at this study of all different socioeconomic levels, from people that were in poverty to people that were called, ultra wealthy. And they asked the same question to each group: how much money do you need to feel secure? And you want to know what everybody said, from poor to ultra wealthy? Any guesses?
Tell me.
Double. If I just had twice of what I have right now, then I
Mm.
think I'd feel secure. The dollar amount doesn't matter. It's like Nelson said, it doesn't matter how much you make, it's how much you keep. And whether you're in poverty, like for American standards, Lord knows we're all super wealthy compared to we don't call it the third world, we call it the majority world, versus ultra wealthy. It's your systems, it's your thought processes, it's your system. I may have already just said that, but what do you have in place when you have a structure and a proven process? For me personally, it frees up a lot of bandwidth, that I'm not having to emotionally wake up in the morning thinking, do we have enough? Do we have enough? Do we have enough?
Well, tactically speaking, I'll tell you one thing that is even on my radar. I was telling a mastermind group of just fellas. We had a fellas only call the other day, and we were talking about in the home, in business. We all have our gifts. We all have our God given gifts, tendencies, proclivities. We work certain ways, and when you can leverage your highs and other people's highs, you can even some things out. So I think it's very typical in a lot of households that somebody's more interested in the concepts, and then somebody's more interested in getting down into the nuts and the bolts and the daily stuff like you're talking about. So if you get that ironed out, that could be super helpful, of course. Or if you could adopt that kind of thing earlier on, it's like, hey, I do better at this stuff. I'll take this. You're better at this. So stuff like that. But even professionally speaking.
Can I give you a real life example?
Yeah.
of the biggest things. Okay, so again, like I graduated from a D1 university with honors. Okay, I know how to pass a test. I can finish what I started. I can do big things. But when it comes to being a COO, chief operating officer of the home, domestic engineer, whatever title we want to put around that, man, I struggle. I just struggle in some ways. And so I remember this was years ago. Our oldest daughter was in second grade and they were doing what's called rocket math. And so it's like this sheet of numbers and they have 1 minute to make it through all these facts. And it's just designed to give them muscle memory over these facts. Well, that was unique torture for us. I mean, there were tears around that particular activity. And she was, gosh, she would have been in second grade. So we only had 3 kids at the time, but our youngest wasn't even in school yet. And, it just chaotic in the afternoon. What was supposed to take 30 minutes was taking 2 hours. And I have some strategies. I taught school for 2 years. So I joke and say, I know what all educators need because I taught for 2 years, like, haha. Anyway, I had some tools, but Jesse, all of my tools were not working. We were experiencing zero breakthrough, in this rocket math example. And I remember sitting out in our backyard by our fire pit, and my husband came home from football practice, and I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and just said, "You go do it. I'm sick of this homework business. What I'm doing is not working. You go do it." And I'm just sitting out there, probably shaming myself, just feeling like a failure for not having the answer to this problem. He comes back in about 20 minutes and he goes, "We got it done." And I said, "What do you mean you got it done?" He said, "Well, I just started looking at it and I figured out that I think maybe it's too overwhelming. So I decided to get a post-it note and an X-Acto knife and I cut a square out of the post-it note and I just made a frame over it for her. And I just had her move it one at a time and I didn't make her write it. I just told her to say it out loud. And she just did it. And I was livid that in less than 20 minutes, he had accomplished what I was beating my head against a wall and like damaging the relationship with my child over, getting super emotional about. And I mean, he does it all the time. And I'm like, why don't I just ask him for help? He's amazing at so many of these things. But I thank God that he's not good at the things that I am, or, that he's gifted in other ways than I am gifted, because man, together we can be a power team, but I'm very grateful I don't have to do it all alone. But he thinks about the world very differently than I do. And most of the time that is a huge blessing. Very, very thankful for that.
For sure. Well, I mean, the reality is that families and marriages and businesses and corporations deal with that kind of stuff or don't deal with it. And I've had some recent insight. I read The Six Working Geniuses. I can't recall the author's name right now. Loved the book, took an assessment afterwards, and it's an assessment of your, I think it's called cognitive abilities. So it's not a personality test, but it actually gauges where your working, peaks are and where your pitfalls are. I excel at this and I just bog down at this thing, right? And you would have yours. And so being able to recognize that stuff and then leverage it, super helpful. It's like, man, why aren't we taught that kind of stuff in school so we can build big, beautiful teams earlier? And anyway, we need more sayings from your grandma, so we need to figure out, these God-given gifts sooner rather than later. Okay. Well, thanks for answering my question around how you reflect on those things, Parkinson's law, the golden rule. You also gave me a great idea for a round table. I want it so you can opt in on this when you want, and you that are listening, you can let me know down in the comment section as well. The roundtable idea that I have is going back to the point in our conversation where we're talking about agents that you can relate to, talk to, work a journey with, versus what's trying to be done out in the marketplace right now, which is this neutered, AI, no people involved. You just come to our vending machine, push the buttons. All right, so you're already getting a feel for what I'm thinking about it, but I think we need to have a roundtable discussion on it. Jodi gave me the idea, so I'm really grateful. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about that, or if you have some other direction that you'd like us to go as well. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for the roundtable idea that you gave me from our conversation. All right. So tell me this. You're in the insurance space. Let's talk IBC. What did it look like when you were actually exposed to the genuine message, the Becoming Your Own Banker book, or something or somebody from the IBC world? How did that happen? What did that look like?
So my very good friend Becca Wilhite, um, this was part of her journey, and so we've known each other for years and years, and so I'm just grateful for our relationship. So when she would learn something, she would tell me about it. So I felt like I was learning vicariously through her. She was reading books. um During 20, it was part of her journey of trying to, I think she was figuring out, okay, I think what we're learning about this debt-free life is actually kind of piggyback, like rooting that around from IBC. And then from that, she was like, okay, I think that actually came from this man named Nelson Nash. And so she began to start to do a lot of research. So I was just inhaling, consuming what I could from her. She was like, this Becoming Your Own Banker book, this is really like the Bible for learning how to do this. And so most I'm embarrassed to say I did not read the book for more than a year. Like, I kind of started it and then I didn't understand it, so I just put it down. And I think I already had my policy in place. Like, I knew what it was supposed to do, but I didn't understand all these little nuts and bolts. I wasn't really concerned about that. I just wanted to solve a problem. And whatever Becca said, I was going to believe it. She's a guardian, so she is into granular details and she cares about all the inner workings. And I'm like, if she's vetted it, we're good. So that works as long as the person that you're cheating off of knows what they're doing. If you're in college and you're cheating off of the next person over, they might be on scholastic probation. So just be careful, who you're piggybacking off of. But podcasts, The Money Advantage, Bruce Wayner and Rachel Marshall, I would just inhale those podcasts and felt like I was learning so much about policy design, just how whole life insurance works. And then, I mean, mostly from podcasts, honestly. Um, that would be conversations with Becca, podcasts, and then eventually books. Finished Becoming Your Own Banker. And then later, gosh, I forget how long Becca's been doing IBC. Like, I think it's just been a year, but I think it's been more like 3 or 4. And so I'm just blown away by how many hours of conversations we've had in that amount of time. Um, but probably towards the end of 2024, no, 2025, I finally was like, Becca, what must I do to be saved? Like, I got to get in, because she's telling me about these communities and think tanks and masterminds and stuff. And I'm like, those are the conversations I want to be having. I love all the different solutions that I can provide for my clients. I very much am interested in health and wellness programs and different solutions with life insurance. I love all of it, but I was like, there was something in my heart that was like, I want to be a part of a community that goes very, very deep into IBC. So I was like, what do I need to do? Do you think they would let me join the practitioner program? And she was like, I think they might. Um, so that was it.
So, all right, well, I got to ask then, because you already came from a background, was there anything along the way? And I'm asking this because not everybody's going to have the benefit of personally knowing someone like Becca, right, who is a wealth of knowledge. Were there any points along the way where you're hearing something from this authentic IBC message and you're like, or it's something you had to work through, something you doubted, something you weren't sure of right away?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so the thing that always tripped me up was I had my policy set up it's whenever going through the Becoming Your Own Banker book, when Nelson keeps talking about charging yourself, like when you're doing loan repayments, and making those payments a little bit more than what it would normally be. Like, I'm not saying this well. Maybe you can help me with the language, but like, okay, if you could pay $100 back in a month, like charge yourself more interest and
Hmm.
repay it at a higher interest. I never could really understand that because I already had a loan repayment in place. Like, I didn't set up a plan. I didn't write it on a paper. I am going to pay back $50 a month or $500 a month. I didn't do that. I just knew in my head, if you don't pay your loans back, at least the interest, then the interest will get lumped into the loan and that can compound over time. Um, so in my head, I was like, I was having a hard time reconciling the way that I was repaying loans and the way that Nelson was saying to repay loans. And I think what I understand now from that is I I think maybe whenever and you can correct my understanding if I'm off on this, but I think maybe when Nelson was writing the book, they didn't have the same products that we have today. And so the purpose of charging yourself a higher interest rate on the loan repayment was a way to get more premium through your policy. Um, Whereas the way my policy is I have a whole life base, a term rider, and a flexible paid up additions rider. And so my strategy was I'm going to fill up my PUAs every year that I possibly can. And then if I have a loan out and I have extra money, well, I'll pay the loan back. I mean, I do have a loan repayment, but that's kind of my order of operations. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I also prioritize cash flow to my policy in the same way. Meaning, number one for me is whatever my regular scheduled baseline premiums are for that. If you got a term rider, it's going to include the term rider. It's going to be your base. It's going to be whatever minimum is necessary to maintain the paid up additions rider. So, number one for me is whatever my regular normal scheduled premiums are, that's what I'm paying. Anytime I can pay extra PUA, like you just said, for me, that's my next priority. And then third being pay my policy loan interest on an annual or however often basis. And then be an honest banker ultimately, and repay loans. But that's the hierarchy. That's the order that I prioritize. So the nice thing about, being an honest banker is, well, there are two things here. One is what you just said is perfectly fine. You are your own banker. That's how you decided to prioritize. And you're not playing by the conventional bank's rules when you're doing it that way. Beautiful. It's fantastic. Do it. Now, if somebody else, though, wants to prioritize the repaying of loans instead of PUAs first, is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. They're the banker. They get to decide. Now, I think it's worthwhile to notice the differences between those two elections, but at the end of the day, you're the banker. You should choose and you go with what you want. Some people just want to refill the reservoir, and in some cases that could make sense. But, when you can wrap your mind around the fact that anytime you can pay extra paid up additional premiums, your death benefit goes up, so it'll be bigger than it otherwise would have been. Now your cash value, because you're not just refilling the void that was created from a policy loan. No, you're paying new premium dollars, which is making a new cash value because the death benefit went up. If the death benefit went up, cash value has to go up. And then that'll make you eligible to earn bigger dividends than you otherwise would have. So those three things are going to happen if we do decide to prioritize additional paid up premiums to the flexible, part of the policy, the paid up additions rider. But neither one of them were wrong. What Nelson is misunderstood for, and that's fine. It's okay to reread. It's okay to think about this, talk about this through with somebody. We're not taught to be our own bankers from the start. So it's going to all be new for the new person. But he was trying to focus on the importance of us giving a true value to capital, a market rate value. If the bank would have charged a 10.75% interest rate for a personal loan if you want to go out and do X, Y, or Z, well then maybe you should consider just round that on up to 11%. If you'd have done that to the bank, Why not round it up? Why not make it 12% or whatever? I'll tell you, Jodi, I can't say too much about this yet, but I'm very, very excited about, I think it's going to make its way to my family banking series. I'm going to have a conversation with my two oldest sons, at least, about a business venture that I think they should consider. And if they do want to do this business, I'm going to suggest that they charge me and Lauren, my wife, more than we would pay in the open marketplace. And now, people aren't going to understand that. It was like, what? Your children should charge you? You're their parents. They should charge you from their business more than they would a customer off the street? My answer to them now is yes, because I'm a captive customer. Because if my sons have this business and they do this business that I am already receiving or tapping into elsewhere, yeah, they should. Now that's just completely foreign to our conventional thinking, though. So I can't wait to have that conversation, and I'll share it with the general public.
I think that is amazing. And that is really something that I mean, not that thought exactly, but what a surprise it has been on this journey to realize how I have been discipled in a certain mindset. And I know it gets said ad nauseum, I think in IBC circles, but rethink your thinking. Like it is a thing. It is a thing. And the way that I think about money, the way that I think about cash flows and what success is determines what kind of a design I'm going to have. It influences everything. Um, and this is, man, the infinite banking concept in its truest form, it is completely a different animal than anything else. And that's why I'm so grateful to be a part of a community of people that have been practicing at a high level for a very long time, just because they've seen so many things. Not that one person has all the truth and this person doesn't. It's not about right or wrong. It's just experience. And um, I don't know. I tell this story too a lot on my journey. So when I was in college, I had the opportunity to go present some research at a international agricultural educators conference in Dublin, Ireland. That's a whole story in and of itself, but I wrote this research paper and it got selected to be presented, and somehow Texas A&M paid for my trip over there. I don't know what the return on their investment has been on that, but I am grateful. It was an amazing experience. At that conference, I met a woman who was originally from California and served in the Peace Corps in Africa in a very rural community. And this is the only thing I remember that she shared, but it stuck with me for more than 20 years now. Okay. Isn't that amazing? The human mind. So she told me this story. She said you could always tell how long someone had been in the Peace Corps by how they behaved around their food. And she
Mm.
said, the first month that you're serving, there could be bugs in your food, and you're just like, I won't eat it. They just push it away, like, I can't do it. I just can't. The second month they're in, they're kind of getting hungry and they just pick the bugs out and eat the food. The third month, they just eat the food. And the fourth month, they're going out finding bugs to put in their food to get some protein. And I relate that a lot to my IBC journey. Is when I was first getting started trying to get my policy going and building cash value and um, all of that. I was so scared to commit to a big premium. What if we can't pay this premium? And what if it's too much? And, I don't know. I don't, is this really going to work? What if it works for everybody else, but not for me? The doubts are there. Okay. Then we rocked along and I took a policy loan and we paid for our first vehicle. And I saw what that was like. We went online to the portal. I think it was a paper, submission at that time.
Mhm.
Filled out my paper, sent it in, and they're like, basically, do you want us to send this to a direct deposit, do a direct deposit, or mail you a check? Okay, I want it direct deposited. Write a check, pay for the car. We own the car and now have a loan out with the life insurance company. And we didn't pay any loan repayment on that for a year. We had just moved to this community and cash flows were pretty tight. And I mean, I had a plan to do it, but where else can you go and not pay on a vehicle for a year and not get it repoed? You know, that was so different than any other experience with, financing something that I'd ever had. And then I remembered, oh, we got to pay on this. So we got a loan repayment and we got after it and it was great, no problems. And I'm like, no, this works. Like, we're not missing a meal. This is working with our lifestyle. Like that loan repayment and that premium payment just come out in one draft. I know when it's coming. If we just plan for it, it's great. No mental bandwidth needed for that system. It just was set it and forget it. And then I forgot to pay our property taxes one year, and I was like, dadgum, they fine you for that, Jesse. They frown upon that. They don't like it when you don't pay up. And I was like, man, if I have to write a check out of our checking account to pay for that, that is going to be a problem. Really don't want to do that. I have a policy that has cash value. I'll just take a policy loan to pay for that. And I did. And you talk about it was slicker than snot on a doorknob. I mean, it just worked. Okay. Write that down.
You with your word pictures in my mind.
This is amazing. This is amazing. It handles the oopsies because I'm just not a perfect person. I don't always do everything just right. But that did not interrupt our family cash flows. We just kept rocking along. And then I already had a loan repayment plan in place. I'm like, it'll get handled eventually. We're fine. We're good. We got a plan in place. Anyway, so then my mindset started to change. I feel like that Peace Corps volunteer that's going out and looking for bugs at this point.
Mhm.
There was a switch, and I don't know when it happened or if it was after a certain podcast or conversation. I just think it was all of it, converging together. And there was just this aha of every dollar that you put through your life insurance policy is now available to be leveraged. Like, it's your money. It's no different than putting it in a bank and then using a debit card. Like, policy loans don't care what they get spent on. Well, because in my mind, I was always thinking policy loans are for big ticket items, cars, big things, not for just cash flow management. It's for big things. And then there was like this shift. I think Becca was probably a part of that. Like, there people are using this in different ways. And I think Joe DeFazio is a big influence there, so somebody else I want to hang out with as much as possible and glean from. Um, and then I don't know, just things started to shift, and I'm like, how much money can we pump through this bad boy? And can I get my husband now a policy? We'll do a convertible term and we're going to build one for him, and we'll start converting chunks of it to whole life and add on a paid up additions rider as we can. But it's like I don't know, it was just this whole shift of like moving from how little can I pay for this to, oh my gosh, I'm building a business. I'm building a banking platform. And if I'm going to own the bank, how much of my money do I want to redeem? How much of my money do I want to pump through? All of it. You want all of it. And anyway, so that's where I'm at. So we're now like on month 2 of taking a loan, putting it in our checking account to pay our bills with, and then when we get paid from our jobs, I pump that into our life insurance policy that takes care of the loan balance, or whatever. We still have a pretty big loan. I don't care when it happens to pay it all off, but I have a process. I have a system that makes sense for us. So I will repay that loan, throw it back in, take another loan, put it in my checking account, just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then we have a place to catch windfalls. Now it's time to fill up our paid up additions again. So that's going to be my priority, getting that done. Like, this is very simple. This is not high level math. that we're doing, or I can't do it. I mean, I can't help my daughter with her geometry. We just are like, well, dadgum, I hope somebody can help her because I can't. This is very, very simple and it's very life-giving. I am incredibly grateful.
I know some people out there are going to have Excel sheets for their Excel sheets, but if you can just wrap your mind around the precepts, the principles, the habits of, I mean, you gave us multiple examples. I love everything you did, just answered, my next three questions about, how do you think about premium and how have you used policies? You're just telling us all, and I love it. Just because you decided to pay a premium, you did a car purchase your way. Fantastic. Because you decided to pay premium in a dedicated way, and then, oops, I dropped the ball on the property taxes, that's taken care of. But your way now. But again, it's like you compare that to earlier when we were talking about the golden rule. Well, if you hadn't paid the premiums, the solutions wouldn't have been there for these things, right? These opportunities and obstacles, and so good, so good. All right, so you've talked some about premium. You've talked some about how you've used policies. I had a question that I did want to ask. It's left me. It'll come back to me.
Well, I will tell you this, and as I'm talking, it'll probably come back and just interrupt me whenever you need to, but um you just can't know all this on the front end. This really has been a journey of just get started. The best policy is the one that's in force, even if it's not one that you are proud of now. Like if the next policy I design is going to be completely different than the way that I did it this first time. And that took a lot of pressure off. I think for people that are perfectionists, they think that there's one policy design, to one ring to rule them all. Like there's not. It's not that way. Um, it totally depends on what your goals are and what type of a policy design is going to help you achieve that. And the goal is to have a bunch of policies, and they can all be designated for different things. Like, you know, I think about vehicles. If I have a bunch of kids, I don't need a Ferrari. Why? I don't have a place to put them. That's not the right tool for the goal. That is not the right vehicle to help me do what I need to do. But if I need to get somewhere real fast, well, I don't want a school bus for that. I might appreciate having a Ferrari. Um, and you can overthink this stuff to death. And I've definitely heard podcasters, IBC practitioners talk about this, is if you just belabor it over and over and over, you fart around. They don't say that. That's my terminology. You're going to mess around, and then something's going to happen and you won't qualify for it. And now you can't do it. On you. You may have a family member that you could do it on, but I have a client right now um, that called me last week, and her we were trying to put life insurance in place on her husband earlier last summer, and there were some issues with the Medical Information Bureau and the Milliman's report. Like in underwriting, there was a mistake, but for whatever reason they hadn't gone. Tried to coach them through the steps to get that report cleaned up and get it rectified, but life happened and I didn't get done. So now, they kicked the can down the road, and then last week she called me and said my husband just had a heart attack. He's 42. We don't have
Hmm.
insurance. And I think he's going to be okay, but what can we do? I'm like, well, nothing now. I mean, I can pray. That's not nothing. I can pray. We're going to pray and believe God for other strategies, but man, I keep telling my kids, heart attack, cancer, stroke, they don't book on your calendar. You don't know when life is going to happen. So, you know, don't be uneducated and jump into something that you don't have any idea about. But to me, life insurance is a no-brainer. Get it done. Do not mess around. Uh, it's just not worth it.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and you even touched on it in your own household with your husband, and making the choice to get convertible term on him, and then you roll that into IBC style policies as you grow out a system of, scaling your private banking system. I could not agree more. Everybody, as soon as possible, should wrap their minds around acquiring as much of their human life value, as much insurance as they can get. The last year, 2025, I got another policy on myself, and I maxed out the insurance on my person. The insurance company told me the number that I could have, and I got all of it. But I've been implementing the concept for years, so I'm saying you don't necessarily do that right out of the gate. You can, it might make sense for you, but as soon as you can wrap your mind around it, be about it. And I would say the same thing about the concept in general that you just did. Educate yourself. Go to the source material for yourself. Vet the concept for yourself. But once you know enough to know that you want to do it, be about it. Get going. All I was wanting to say earlier to recap that you gave us so many great examples of was the financing of the IBC way, even if it's done inefficiently, meaning we have this year hiatus of no loan repayments, because X, Y, or Z from life. That's still so much superior to conventional finance, where you are playing by somebody else's rules and they're holding the collateral over your head and all this other kind of stuff. I loved all of that. All right, so do this. Bring me up to date on anything that you do want to share from your personal implementation of the concept, and then also where you're at professionally with the concept.
Yeah. So personally implementing the we just got my husband's convertible term put in place a couple of months ago. And so my question now that I'm knocking around with my mentors is, all right, so when's the right, like when do you know that it's time to convert some of that and build out the next part of your platform? Like I don't have my brain wrapped around that. So that's the conversation that I'm having with my mentors. I'd love to know what if you is there like a rule of thumb, is there one thing I've been told is, well, I think honestly just when you have faith enough to go ahead and convert and just get after it. So that's been one answer. Um but that I am interested to know, like, is there a best practice of when you have convertible term, when to start building that out? um and man, I've also learned that every IBC practitioner has their own ideas of what they think, resonates with them. So it's not a one size fits all. Um, at some point, you need to just make a decision of this is how I'm going to run my policies. You know, you can analyze stuff to death and then just not get it done. So I mean,
It's also true that in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. So that is a great benefit to get multiple perspectives from people that you appreciate for sure in anything.
I feel the same way about IBC practitioners as I do about surgeons. If you get about three or four opinions and they're all generally saying the same thing, I think you have a good diagnosis.
Yeah.
They are going to have a little bit of nuance, based on how they were trained. That's fine. But if generally speaking, they're saying the same thing, I think that's important. Um, and then professionally, I am in the IBC program, the practitioner program, so I'm working my way through those courses, and I've been reading Carlos Lara's book and Dr. Murphy's about how privatized banking really works. That has been awesome. I really, really like that book. And if you had told me years ago that I would even utter the words Austrian economics, I would have been like, "What are you talking about?" Um, but it's fascinating to me how, at least from where I'm sitting right now, economics is really about human behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Man, those things tied it's just, it really tells a story. And I find all of that very interesting. And so I've been preaching to my kids. I've been making my girls explain to me what fractional reserve banking is. And they don't appreciate it like I do, but I'm like, one of these days you're gonna know, like my grandmother, going back, she was the one that taught us about taxes. We have this one experience when we went up to we grew up in such a small town. I don't think people understand. We had no stoplights. We had two paved roads, and you had to cross a cattle guard to get into town. So the only like grocery store was like our convenience store. And so we went up there to get candy one day and get treats, and that was exciting. And my sister and cousin, we'd spent all the money. Okay, I was with my siblings and my cousins. We all grew up on the farm together. And so we ran back out to go get more money from my grandmother, and she told my sister, "Nope, you can't do that. You always have to remember the tax. And so gonna have to put some candy back." And just that one example
Mm-hmm.
seared into our brains that sales tax is a thing and you have to account for that. So anyway, I totally forgot where I was going with that story.
We were at Austrian economics in the practitioner program. I would say to that, there's nothing new under the sun. Human behavior.
Yes, it really is. Like, it tells a story and helps us understand what our tendencies are. And it has exposed a lot of um, just mindsets that I keep saying this, like, I've been influenced by ways of thinking, and some of them are been great, and some of them I think they need to change. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize how much I had been drinking the Kool-Aid from the world, you know. But that isn't that beautiful? Like when you know better, you get to do better.
Yep, absolutely. Well, tell me this, and then you can leave folks with anything you want to leave them with. I'm going to have my rapid fire questions, but what's a good way for people to contact you or reach out to you?
Yeah, I would say Facebook, Jodi Rogers LaFrance. That's my personal page. And then I think it's Jodi LaFrance Agency. I have that, but I'm not on there very much. So I would just say reach out to me on social media. Um, and I'm happy to have conversations.
Awesome. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like to share with folks?
I really, at least where I'm at right now, especially because we have kids and teenagers that are, you know, they're on social media and everybody has a bag of seed. And we don't always know what seed is being planted in the garden of our hearts and our minds. And so I just think I'm so incredibly grateful for the think tank and in Birmingham with Winnie and Imaja telling their story about how just we need to be educating the next generation on how to think about money. It's not always the product, it's understanding the problem, understanding the process, and then eventually, you know, at some point we might talk about product. But if we don't know what's wrong, we don't know how to fix it. And just to not to sow fear, but to lay a strong foundation. Um, and if we're not practicing, why do we think that our kids are going to somehow magically understand how cash flow works and how to manage that and what things help you move you forward, you know? Um, that's important to me.
I love it. And you mentioning Winnie and Amaja, that's a mother daughter dynamic duo that gave a presentation for anybody that doesn't know who they are. Yes, we should be very intentional with the next generation. My goodness, let's do it. Awesome. Well, folks are going to know where to find you, and I'm ready to ask you some rapid fire questions. Are you set?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd love to know about a recent favorite book or podcast. Obviously related or not, doesn't matter.
Okay, we just finished reading Dr. Lee Warren's book, The Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery. Highly recommend.
That's my first time hearing that. Fantastic. Thank you.
Warren, The Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery, and a lot about neuroplasticity, and that we literally can rethink our thinking and we can change. You can be a self-brain surgeon and change the structure of your brain by changing what you think about.
Okay, I cannot disassociate the word neuroplasticity from the backwards bicycle video. So if anybody's not seen, just go to YouTube, the backwards bicycle. What's his name? Better Every Day.
I
You'll
can't his
it's
name. I know
incredible.
what you're
But
talking
learning how to ride an opposite bicycle, we can do it. We can relearn. Okay, so you've already said things like being in a Mexican band, traveling to Ireland, but I'm curious about, okay, is there some hobby or and you speak Spanish. So is there some hobby or is there some hidden talent that people may or may not know that you have or that you could expound on?
I don't know. I just think I like to laugh. I love to connect with people and hear their stories. I can sing, I can play the guitar poorly. I would like to get better. I'm a big dreamer. I'm a good friend to have. I'm a lot of fun.
You are a lot of fun. Well. What my answer to the question, although I needed to hear yours, of course, was well. I think you're really great at word pictures. You're going to say something that's going to stick in somebody's mind and give them a very vivid picture in their mind for what it is that you're describing. Okay. How about what's one of your favorite quotes of all time?
Mm. I go back to my grandmother's phrase of an ounce of favor is worth a lifetime of labor. Um, all of this, the things that we think about in life and we work so hard to overcome all of these problems to have a better life. And, you know, that's all good and well. But at the end of the day, like I have a God. I can't choose that for anybody else, but I've made so many mistakes in my life, and if not for the grace and the mercy of God, I don't know where I would be. And so I'm just incredibly grateful that we're going to do the best we can with what we have and commit to growing and getting better every day. But at the end of the day, I am a human being, and
Mhm.
I am so grateful that I have a God, and He said that He would help me.
That's right. The proverb says, "The horse is prepared for the day of battle." And I use that one with my children. We got stuff to do. We have stuff to do. There are things that we can do and that we can do well or poorly, and that choice is ours. But the second half of that verse from Proverbs is safety is from the Lord. So, we do what we can do and then we'll just leave the rest to Him, right? All right, well, then tell me this. Do you have a favorite Bible character? And it could just be in this season of life, whatever that is for you right now. Do you have a favorite Bible character or passage that's speaking to you and why?
Okay, so we just had Easter, and I have always just been captivated by that part of scripture where on Friday when Jesus gives up his spirit and he dies, he is dead. The Bible says that in Matthew it says there was an earthquake and that the saints were resurrected. Like it wasn't just Jesus that came back from the dead. There were other human beings who had they were saints, they had put their faith in God, that were resurrected. What in the world was that like to have grandma and grandpa coming back and telling their story? Like death is not the end, there is more. Death is not the end. Like I that has just captured my imagination these past days.
Okay, I'm seeing all these conversations that I'd love to continue on. That being one of them. How about either a go-to healthy habit of yours or a bad habit that you've broken before?
Okay, so a go-to habit, a good morning routine. Get up early before the kids wake up and have coffee, to be silent for a few minutes and see what just see what thoughts come to the forefront of my brain, and then just take those captive and invite the Holy Spirit in to say, like, what do you think about that?
Mm.
What do you think about that? Um, and getting my heart in a place of peace before I start engaging in technology. I have had seasons where I've done that really well, and then seasons where I've really struggled. And so, um, but I can tell you life is better when I get ahead and get my head screwed on straight and my heart right before trying to solve problems for the day.
I love my morning routine, and there have been times when that's not been firing on all pistons, and for me as well. But when it is, it's good. It's good. How about sunrise or sunset?
Mm, I love sunsets.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains,
Mm. Picnic or restaurant?
restaurant,
Flowers or plants?
Plants.
If you were a star, which color would you be?
Blue.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
If you're going through hell, don't stop.
Most interesting place you've ever visited?
The one that comes straight to me is when I was an intern in Washington, D.C., and I was giving tours of the Capitol for our constituents. That there's a railroad underneath the Capitol that the senators and the House members use to get from their office to uh, the rooms. The Capitol, all the things that they have to do. Like, just the whole Capitol building is a fascinating place.
What characteristic do you value most in someone?
Truth.
Awesome. And then I got this question from my boys. I like ending the rapid fire questions with this. If you had the ability, would you rather be able to fly or breathe underwater?
Fly.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a ton of fun, Jodi. For everybody that's listening, for you that's listening, Jodi's contact information is going to be below in the show notes where you can reach out to her. You can find me at durhamtalents.com. It's been a great pleasure for me to have this conversation. Hopefully Jodi will join us for a round table here soon, since she's been giving me ideas for that round table. But it is my hope that you will live and leave a lasting legacy. Had to say that while I was thinking about it. I see some teeth missing. Oh my goodness. I wish I could take my phone. I got a picture yesterday, Jodi, of my little girl. My son helped her pull out one of her front teeth. It looks like you've been getting some baby teeth out. Fantastic.
Did I pull them or did you pull them?
You did? I wanted to pull my own teeth too. Good for you. Amazing.
Well, she's number 5. She's got to be scrappy.
I'm the last.
Yeah.
Save the best for last. Huh? All right,
Me.
let me finish here, okay?
Amazing.
I love it. I'm impressed, and thank you for just doing what you do. It's important, You're a powerful voice in the world, and I'm grateful to call you friend.
Appreciate that. Grateful to call you a friend as well. If you find these videos helpful along your infinite banking journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Live and leave a lasting legacy.